All right, we'll call this meeting to order. If you could all please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for attending the meeting tonight. Next up, we have to approve the agenda for tonight. It's a long one, but a good one. Is there any additions that we need to make by anybody?
I have no additions, Mr.
No additions? All right, motion to approve the agenda for the evening?
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. All right. All right, next we got a couple public hearings tonight. First up is the public hearing on ordinance 2024-4, an ordinance amending the city code by adding chapter 5 regarding cannabis and hemp businesses in the city of LeCenter. Okay. City Attorney Moran, would you like to?
Yes, today is the public hearing for that particular ordinance. There's a copy that is in the packet. Essentially, recreational marijuana. I call it marijuana. Other people call it other things, but I call it marijuana. It has been legalized by the Minnesota legislature. Cities in the area are passing ordinances in anticipation of retail sales. LeCenter is doing the same. We'll be able to regulate hours of operation and locations where these particular businesses will be placed. We, of course, are not going to place them in any of the residential areas. Planning and zoning, I believe, has met and has reviewed some of this. Dan, if you could inform the public as to where they will be placed.
No, we haven't done that yet. This is primarily planning and zoning. We spoke last month, and they will be having their public hearings as it relates to the zoning code. This one before us tonight is primarily just the business portion as it relates to hemp and THC. There is one kind of zoning caveat in there, which is the 200-foot setback from a school. The state statute gave us 1,000 feet, and if we went with that original recommendation, that would essentially cut off about half of our commercial district, which we didn't feel was appropriate at the time, so that's why it was drafted with the 200-foot mark. That's basically all that is as far as the zoning goes, but or as far as the setback goes. But there will be zoning hearings in the future, and zoning administrator Block can touch on that later on in the agenda as far as kind of the tentative timeline that we're going to be looking at for those recommendations to the council.
In terms of hours of operation, our ordinance would allow for low potency hemp edibles, which are essentially the marijuana that's infused in edible drinks. Those would be allowed to be sold between 1 a.m. and 8 a.m. on each day, which essentially coincides with alcohol sales. In terms of the adult use, the higher potency cannabis, we have determined that we're going to limit those hours from 10 p.m. to 10 a.m. So they would not be able to be sold after 10 p.m., would not be able to be sold before 10 a.m. of each day. I believe that is also consistent with what you have been talking about, Dan, and what planning and zoning is looking at as well. And that's consistent with what other cities in the area are doing as well. That, in a nutshell, is the ordinance.
A couple things that, can I just mention out of here that I highlighted, just so everybody knows. There will be a license required. An application for the license you need to get. And obviously they went over restrictions of the business. There are fees for the license as well.
That is correct. The licenses, the city will not really be taking any part in the licenses. That'll be essentially done by the state. The state has set up what is called the Department of Cannabis, or an Office of Cannabis Management. They're having some challenges, frankly, getting that going. I don't anticipate the state issuing any licenses probably until late spring of 2025, maybe even summer of 2025. But essentially, businesses that choose to sell these types of products will have to apply for a license from the state. The city, as we just mentioned, will be able to set hours of operation and determine the zoning where these places can set up. But beyond that, the city won't have a whole lot of regulation or control over them. That will largely be done by the state. Initial license fee will be $500, and then after that, the renewal is $1,000. That is right out of state statute. We have no control over that either. We have control over the hours of operation and, to some extent, the zoning, and that's what this ordinance does.
Instead of adding too much to this later, it kind of impacts you guys right now, but Administrator Evans and I had talked about this. Regarding cannabis, there's going to be some overlap between what you guys allow and where planning and zoning would allow it. There's going to be some overlap both directions. The most controversial stuff could potentially be what you guys are talking about. So instead of planning and zoning spinning their tires on where it can be sold, we wanted you guys first to decide if it can be sold, how much of it can be sold, how many places can sell it, all that kind of stuff. Aside from the location, the distance from the schools and that kind of stuff, it was easier for planning and zoning to react to placing it in a zoning district after you guys determined if it's even allowed in the city at all. So we thought it'd be best. We didn't want to have the public hearing, and there's a couple planning and zoning members here tonight, and I asked them to be here so they could hear any of the public discussion too, but we didn't want to have the discussion about where it could be sold or where it could be processed if you guys were only going to limit it to one business or one location. We didn't want to field the questions on the stuff that wasn't relevant to us. We just wanted to field the questions that were going to be relevant to land use. So although we're missing it by a little bit, we'll have the public hearing for us for planning and zoning and land use after this, before the next meeting. But we wanted to have you guys get your portion of it out of the way before we reacted to you, instead of the other way around.
By and large, this does fit the zoning district of, we're talking retail sales, so effectively, condition, use for any of our business for retail sales, I feel, and I know Zoning Administrator Blockville is the same way, generally would be allowable in any business district that the city has as far as retail sales go. Now, depending on public input, if there is any, or different opinions of the council, likely we'll probably go into those first meetings with having, basically that being allowable use for our kind of downtown business district area. Very similar to alcohol sales operating in that district as well.
Any questions? Anybody else have any comments or questions or about this from our council?
Well, tonight's the public hearing.
Yep.
I mean, we really should be doing.
Is there anybody from the public that would like to come up and speak? If you would like to come up and speak, please state your name, address, and your comments.
I just have a question. Do you have to allow it?
We do have to allow it. We can regulate it in terms of hours of operation
Yeah, I get
and
that.
zoning, but otherwise we have to allow it.
Good question.
Any other questions?
Well, and correct me if I'm wrong, if we did not put our restrictions on it, there'd be
Then they don't,
no restrictions.
they're correct.
Yeah. So no more questions?
You know, and realistically, this is new, you know, every city in the state's navigating this kind of all together. So I'm sure there's gonna be some case law changes as we progress, you know, down the years, and there might be some different limitations or restrictions in the future that we're unaware of now.
Yeah.
That'll be determined with time and case law potentially down the road.
So this would be a fluid ordinance and be able to be revised at any time by the council?
It's absolutely going to change. There are already legislative fixes on different gray areas in the original legislation. Those legislative fixes are scheduled for 2025. How I have drafted this ordinance is basically like your alcohol ordinance. You incorporate state law, and anytime state law changes, yours automatically changes as well. But we're going to have some minor tweaks in terms of zoning, hours of operation, things that we do have control over. Those will be in your ordinance.
Thank you.
But anytime state law changes, yours will automatically be incorporated in. And that's just how we do with the alcohol too. And there will absolutely be changes over the next 2 to 5 years. And probably a lot of them, and some of them substantial.
It's a new avenue, and lots of changes will happen with that, right? Any other questions, comments, public? Anybody else from the council? All right, we are going to close.
The motion to...
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, sorry, yeah, you might have gone this way, we just need a motion to close that public hearing.
Need a motion to close the public hearing.
I make a motion.
Second. We got a motion and a second to close the public hearing. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. All right, we need a motion to open our next public hearing, which is the truth and taxation hearing for the final 2025 tax levy and general fund budget.
I'll make a motion to open the truth and taxation hearing.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. All right. All right. The truth and taxation hearing for the final 2025 tax levy and general fund budget. Right now, we are going to see an increase of $1,648,272 for a 13.16% increase. Is there anybody from the public that would like to come up and talk? City Administrator Evans, do you have anything on this?
Well, we're going to talk about this
Thank you.
resolution later on, but this will just kind of pull up the overview. Oh, go ahead.
Brent Christian, 730 East Meadowview Lane, here in LeCenter. Did you plan to go through the budget at all, or just talk about?
We can, if you have, you know, generally the council's been pretty open if you have questions. We did have a budget workshop, and we talked about this at our preliminary levy as far as getting into the nitty-gritty of numbers.
Okay.
But we can certainly, I can answer.
No, I don't mean to do that. And
Yeah.
to begin with, I want to, thank you guys for all serving. I know it's a thankless position. You don't get paid a lot of money. But my only comment is on one of the pages, I don't even know what number it's at. But if you look at the last levies or the past, I think it's 11 years, 12 years, from 2014 to 2022,
Page 40.
other than 2014, there was an 8.63 levy. But even through 2022, that's 9 years, that averages out to be 2% over 9 years per year. In the last 3 years, it's 12.5%. So I just wanted to point that out. I think at some point, you've got to sharpen your pencil a little bit. This is hard to sustain for taxes and property owners.
You are correct on that. And before this, on 2013, if you remember that, and 2012, which aren't on here, those both were 25% increases as well.
They were,
They were.
okay.
They were quite large.
Yeah.
And as we go with cost of living and just the way cost of prices coming up, these increases that we had there were quite lower than they probably should have been. And now playing a little catch up here from those years as well.
Okay.
Too. So I do agree with you, but we do have to sort of make up for, lack of better words, time lost.
Sure.
If I could,
And we all feel the bite.
if I could also.
I don't disagree with that. You're all property owners, you know.
You know, if I could also make a comment too, you know, me coming into this just for a few years now, when you break down, and that's why I built this chart to show past data in there, because if you just simply broke down a cost of living, let's just say a 2% on wages across the board, you know, a lot of these numbers essentially wouldn't even reflect those increases. So what I believe was happening was the general fund balance was kind of diving, and some of those fund reserves were being eliminated because potentially there wasn't enough being levied. Because if you look at just in general, you know, like I mentioned, a 2% increase for any labor you had, or just really any increases to health insurance. I mean, when you look at the chart on there and you're talking about a numbers wise, you know, 2016, we're talking a $30 increase, 2017, 13,000. You know, for a whole city budget to only go up that small of amount just for the increases that were likely passed back then, I just don't see how that is possible. Typically, probably around that time, a lot of cities were maybe 5-6% at a minimum and moving on from there. But I'm glad you pointed that out, but I also wanted just to mention that too, that likely wasn't budgeted enough throughout those later years.
Certainly, and that's understood, but if you look at the increases as an average, I would think that you could go back and say, okay, which areas are these increases coming from, and can something be done about those areas?
Sure.
I mean, it's a huge packet. You guys are the ones that analyzed it. I didn't. I'm just pointing out these facts. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you, Brian. All right, anyone else from the public?
I didn't have anything prepared, but curious, how much of our population, I'm Anita Yonda, LeCenter, Minnesota. How much has our population increased in the last few years?
I don't know the census data off the top of my head, but I think right now we're at 2517 from the state demographic.
Which is
2517.
Okay, so what was the population in 2014? I mean, you don't know those numbers, but the population doesn't appear to have increased significantly.
Anita, in 2010, it was 2499.
2499?
Yep, and then in 2000, it was 2200. So it did go down a little bit between 2010 and 2020.
Okay. Are people demanding more services?
In general, I think goods and services has gone up, and a lot of this is operational in nature. I spoke last month about the significant increases from an insurance standpoint and also workman's comp. Our workman's comp went up, I want to say 50% or so because of the past claim. So just those generic increases, and then wages and benefit increases. And like when you just look for general services increases, it's all around us. Things are going up for as far as goods and services.
Okay. All right. So some people feel like as citizens our requests haven't been met, because I've come here a number of times about the issue of blight in our community over the last 2 or 3 years, and I get nothing. And I don't understand if the number of employees and the number of benefits, and we should get some sort of response to our questions.
And if I could answer you on that one, I totally agree with the addition of our midship and our law enforcement. Right now, the police department has got about 47 pending blight cases, some of which have cleaned up, and then the other ones are continuing down the process of getting that. So even now, you should see some improvement out there, but I would agree with the blight matters, and that was brought up at the last month's meeting too, on kind of what the police department was doing as far as some of those issues. 'Cause, yeah, it's been getting bad, and had some complaints within the last month, which kind of stemmed them kind of doing a full court press and trying to get those properties cleaned up.
Okay, and then I've been attending the county board meetings, and they're in their truth and taxation. If you look on the back of the page, their budget was at 6.8%, their increase, but they got it down to 3.9. So is this 13% gonna be whittled down? I mean, they brought theirs back by 3%, so is there no decrease in what was on our tax statement?
That's a decision that the council has to make tonight on whether or not they want to, in September we set it, and we obviously can't go up from there. And then the council's decision tonight is if they want to accept the final levy or if they want to reduce it. So it's certainly an option as far as logistics go for this evening.
Okay, so that is an option.
We can always do both.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you, Nita. Anybody else from the public? Anybody else from the city council? No? All right. We need a motion to close the public hearing for truth and taxation for the final 2025 tax levy and general fund budget.
I make a motion.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. All right. All right, moving on to the consent agenda for this evening. Consent agenda, we have approval of minutes from the regular council meeting held on November 12th, 2024. We have the approval of claims to be paid. We have approval of resolution number 2024 AC, a resolution designating a poll place for 2025. A resolution number 2024 AD, a resolution approving the transfer of $75,000 from the liquor store fund to the general fund. Letter E, a resolution number 2024 AE, a resolution accepting a donation for $45,827.20 from Clancy Mager on behalf of the Men's Softball Association for improvements at the West Park. With that, I do want to thank them so much for that donation. If you have not had a chance to go up there and check it out, they had cement poured around the pavilion, took out some of the old cement, put some cement in the dugouts, and also some rock that was put in there that looks really nice, as well as gutters put around the pavilion. Clancy headed that up, and he got Tim Kelly's construction to work, and Tim Kelly got a few other contractors in town to help out with that. Mock Construction did the gutters, and the city staff helped out a lot with removal of things, and also brought in a lot of rock and helped out with those costs as well. So I just want to say thank you for that donation as well. And then approval of resolution number 2024 AF, a resolution accepting a donation of $13,000 from the Carol and Verna Schmidt Foundation for the purchase of encrypted radios. This was a $13,000 donation. Kevin Huber of our Lee Center Police Department wrote the grant application. I want to thank him up for that as well. So
It's Carl. Carol is not. It's Carl and Verna Schmidt Foundation.
sorry, I apologize.
It's spelled wrong.
I apologize.
No, I was gonna say-
The resolution does have it, I apologize on the agenda, I did not catch that.
All right. We need a motion to approve the consent agenda for tonight.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion passes. All right, public comment. This is when anybody from the public can come up. You have about 3-minute time limit. If you have any petitions, requests, comments, or communications, please come up to the podium, state your name and your address. Anybody from the public want to come up and talk? No? All right. All right, moving on to old business. Letter A, the only thing there, we have the update, 3% on the credit card processing fee for muni on-sale operations. Ms. Bickla, do you have anything for us on that?
Yep, so to answer some of your questions from the last meeting, we would have to do a software update, which they can do overnight at any time. And then there is a dual pricing option, so we can pick and choose, obviously, to use it in off-sale only or bar only. If someone were to, like your question was, if someone were to purchase in the bar and then transfer their tab over to off-sale, we can then only do the processing fee for the bar, and they wouldn't get that in the off-sale. It would just be for what they purchased in the bar. So basically, we can pick and choose a transaction to pass the fee. I think that's basically all. We looked into the laws and everything, and we're, as long as basically we state that they can pay with cash for a discount per se, then it says if the credit card surcharge is an optional charge, a consumer can reasonably avoid the surcharge by paying with cash. Then this credit card surcharge is not a mandatory fee, so that's the law. Basically, as long as we advertise, display, and offer that if they pay by cash, it'll be a better deal, so. Any questions?
Any questions for Ms. Bickla?
Thanks for doing the research on that.
Yeah, thank you. Anybody else have anything on that? No? All right. Thanks, Becky. All right, moving on to new business. All right, this is the second reading and approval of ordinance 2024-4, an ordinance amending the city code by adding chapter 5 regarding cannabis and hemp businesses in the city of Lee Center. Sorry here. All right, this is the second reading. If you were here for the public hearing, you saw all of this. In this, obviously, right away, we have a bunch of definitions stated there. Moving on, in this chapter and or amendment, licenses will be required, applications for licenses, restrictions on businesses, which were the 200 feet from the public school.
Correct.
Hours of hemp business shall not engage in the retail sale of hemp-derived products or low-potency hemp edibles from 1 a.m. to 8 a.m. each day. Cannabis businesses shall not engage in retail sale of cannabis flower or adult use cannabis products from 10 p.m. until 10 a.m. each day. Cannabis businesses, hemp-derived retail businesses, and low-potency hemp retail businesses facilities shall meet or exceed the standards set forth in the Minnesota State Building Code, Fire Code, and the City Code of Ordinances. License holders shall operate in full compliance with the city's zoning controls, including obtaining any applicable conditional use permits prior to operation. You need license fees. There is a license fees for that. City Attorney Moran?
Yeah, you've hit on all the salient points. The initial fee will be $500 for the initial setup. A renewal fee will be $1,000, and again, those come right from state statute. Again, much of this comes right from state statute. It's simply non-discretionary. We have to follow it. But you've hit on all the salient points, and I don't know what more can be said on this.
One thing that I did want to mention is that with the kind of local registration component, we are required to do compliance checks, and I've got that pulled up on the screen here, which basically states that either the sheriff's office or our local police department needs to conduct age-related checks as far as compliance. We're not required to know the product and packaging and that sort of thing. This is just basically an age verification check. So that was the only other notable thing that I wanted to add to the mayor's kind of overview on that.
Very similar to the alcohol check.
All right, anything else from the city council on that? Anything else from the public? If there's nothing else, we need a motion to approve ordinance number 2024-4.
I'll make a motion. Approve 2024-4.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Approved. All right, letter B, approval of the summary publication for ordinance 20-4. It's on page 35 here. City Administrator Evans.
Yeah, so essentially, state statute indicates that we have to do a summary publication. It would be too cost prohibitive to publish the whole ordinance, so they give us the means to just do a summary, which basically just gives the heading of the ordinance, and if anybody wants a full copy, it's available at City Hall, and I also believe after tonight it'll be on the website as well. So just need approval of that summary publication, and then that'll go into the LeSueur County News at the next available publishing date.
I'll make a motion to approve the summary publication of ordinance 2024-4.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Same sign. All right, approved. All right, going forward here, letter C, approval of resolution number 2024 AG, a resolution to accept the 2025 final property tax levy and general fund budget. It does start on page 36. Again, on here, the total property tax levy is $1,648,272 for an increase of 13.16%. Like we stated in the public hearing, there are a lot of factors that go into this increase. It is a big increase. Our initial percentage was not that high, but last minute, circumstances.
Mr. Mayor, I do want to correct you. The initial one in our preliminary was 13.16.
So it was.
I believe what you're referring to is the workman's comp that came in that effectively took away the initial increase that we had set to go to the capital improvement fund 401.
My bad. I apologize. Yes. So, a lot of things come into play with this. I personally don't believe there's a lot of wiggle room that we have here. There's things that our city needs. We need a great police force. We need a great staff that works in our building here. We need equipment and facilities for them to work with and work out of. So.
And we've been hit with a lot of equipment upgrades. That's the big issue between needing to go to encrypted. Granted, we got some grant on that, and I know, Dan, you need that truck that was falling apart. It just
Yep, and it was body cams for the police
body
department.
cameras.
Wage adjustments to get our staff within market average, so we're not losing staff to other municipalities. But I think we as a council, we all agree it's a big number and it stings us all.
So, does anybody have any questions? Any more questions, any comments from the public? Anybody from the city council staff here?
I just think we went through it thoroughly and we made the best decision we could with what we had, and that's where we're at. So,
Dan, what was the increase on, what do you call it, workman's comp? Up here.
20, I don't remember the percentage, but it was roughly 27,000. So I believe the initial was about 46,000 and increased by 27,000 in a value. I don't remember the percentages off the top of my head. It was a very considerable increase. So I believe it was somewhere in the 50% range, somewhere in there. And that's directly related to the experience modification, that if you get a claim, against the city, you've got an experience mod point against you with a value, and then they take that and then they put it towards it, and that affects you for a little while. And if you go and continue to go, and our hope is obviously that no one gets injured, and we keep up with our safety meetings and bring things to staff and your guys' attention that need flushing out, so we can maintain that safety of our staff, and that experience mod goes away, and then effectively our premiums get lowered as well. So that's always the end goal.
And
Thank you.
And from doing the research from around the areas too, we are not the only municipality that are getting hit. So it's a commonality around the area too. So is there any more discussion? If there's no more discussion, we need a motion to approve resolution number 2024 AG.
I make a motion to approve resolution 2024 AG.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. All right, moving on to the letter D, approval of the personal policy handbook updates to take effect January 1st, 2025. That is on page 68 and goes to page 75. In this, you'll see a few additions to the verbiage here for bereavement leave. With that had to be added for what reason? That wasn't part of the...
That wasn't originally part of the original sick and safe. There are three fundamental things that the legislature did when they put that on there. It was, the illness, the safety, and the closure. And they have since added this bereavement leave component, kind of making it a four-pronged approach. So the Council of Governments had this recommended update for the last legislative session that did this change. So that effectively will go in the policy book as it's outlined in red there on page 69.
All right. There's not a lot of other verbiage there. If you move further down the line to pages 70 through 70,
No, I believe that's it. That's just the 2 pages there for the,
yeah,
for
my
the-
bad. I thought that was part of the...
no, so we would just need a motion.
Are there any questions from anybody else here with the non-union benefits package? No questions? We need to approve the personnel policy handbook updates.
I make a motion to approve personal policy handbook updates.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right. Letter E, approval of annual wage increase for non-union staff for the 2025 calendar year. On here, on page 70 is where they are at now. There you got it tilted right there. And on page 71 through 73 are in the green at the top. You'll be able to see the percent increase there depending on what you have chosen or what you choose. So it's not 100 and...
It's 1%.
It's 1%.
Yep, that's just
Yeah.
how the formula works in the wage study that was adopted. So essentially, there's 3 options included. And this, we spoke about this pay scale and the adoption of it and how this works is if the council grants cost of living adjustments effectively, that 101, or just 1%, as is shown on the screen here, affects that wage in the top left corner, and then essentially affects the whole scale going down to kind of reflect that 1% cost of living. So there's one for a 1%, and then there's also a scale for a 2%, and then a scale for a 3%. So it's really up to council's discretion on what cost of living, if any adjustment that they would want to do to the scale. It's a horse apiece on what's out there. I believe the county and a couple of their contracts have a tentative agreement on like a 3.5. I've heard of other cities kind of around that area, 2 to 3%, kind of right in there. So between the 1 and 3% is what you have here, and then if you wish to do so, then we just would need a motion for a cost of living adjustment.
With this, see Mr. Evans, and our staff, we're market value right now, right?
Yeah, so if the council remembers when when this wage scale was adopted earlier part of the year, Council of Governments came in and did a market rate study and pulled data from a lot of other cities in the area, and then also data from other similarly sized population cities. And it's basically to match what they deemed market rate or market value for each employee. And effectively, they went through and did a job classification points value on each position, and then we've overlaid it in this scale. Prior to this, there was never any scale in place. It was always cost of living adjustments, really to fix it at market rate. But this puts a point value to the position, and then essentially a step value for that position. So by and large, that's kind of how this system works. Most cities that I'm familiar with in the area do have some sort of a scale, just to make sure that we're meeting expectations for as far as I'm forgetting the word. Maria, what's the thing we have to do every 3 years for equality and pay? For
The pay equity
Pay
stuff.
equity, thank you. Yep, so just make sure that we're in compliance with pay equity as well for positions that we have female employees and that we're paying them the same, so that makes sure we're in compliance with that.
Does anybody have any questions for City Administrator Evans? Well, the last few years we've been playing catch up, and I believe we are caught up. I would say that 2% right in the middle is where we should go.
Would that make us start to fall back behind though? If COLA is 3.5% on average.
City Administrator Evans?
I think 2% is fair. You're always going to maybe be, playing catch up, but I think as far as, staff's concerned, there was a lot of adjustments that were made, so I would tend to probably go more on the minor side and just going with the 2%. And not increasing it.
Okay.
I'd be on board with that.
Yeah.
How about over here?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree.
All right, we need a motion to approve, sorry here, the annual wage increase for non-union staff at 2%.
I'll make that motion to approve the annual wage increase for non-union staff at 2%.
I will second that.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. All right, moving on to letter F. Oops, sorry, G. Approval of resolution number 2024AH, a resolution to approve the purchase of a plow truck.
Mr. Mayor, let me stop you there. We grant letter F.
It is F, yep.
Approval of 25 benefits for full-time staff.
Sorry, my bad. I was thinking that was part of it. All right, approval of benefits for full-time staff. Has nothing has changed down here?
Correct. This is the same benefits package that was offered in 2024. However, it's nice that when you onboard new employees, everyone always asks what the benefits are. So this just basically has a benefits overview for 2025. So it does pull some things out of personnel policy for talking about vacation rates, paid sick leave. That lines up with the personnel policy, what the holidays are, and then kind of what the health insurance plans that are currently offered for 2025 and the contribution rates. Talks about the health savings option that's available, and term insurance, and then short-term, long-term disability, and then the pension plan for our Public Employees Retirement Association. So everything's the same as what it was in 2024. This just kind of puts a package together that's going to be a nice tool to hand out for anybody onboarding that says what that is.
Any other questions for City Administrator Evans? Pretty good one.
So we just need a motion just to formally, the city's never done that before, but I think it's good practice to get into knowing, what benefits are going to be, anticipated for 2025.
We need a motion to approve the 2025 benefits for full-time staff.
I'll make a motion to approve 2025 benefits for full-time staff.
Second.
We got a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. All right, now on to letter G. Approval of resolution number 2024AH, a resolution to approve the purchase of a plow, truck chassis, and the upfitting for it. Obviously, this is a thick part of it too, page 76. This truck. Obviously, we've had a lot of issues with our last one that we pulled. Putting a lot of money to it.
Dan, you want to speak on this one a little bit about your process and who you reached out to and what you're looking for?
Please.
It was quite a process. I reached out to truck companies out of Mankato and Faribault to get the price for the truck itself. You can't just get the truck and the equipment all at one place. So you have to get the truck and the frame and the chassis at one place, and then all the truck equipment. I priced out Towmaster and Price Steel. And I found that the cheapest truck out of the three was the Freightliner for $102,254. And Towmaster out of Litchfield came in at the cheapest for the plow equipment, which would be the front plow, the underbelly, which is the scraper, the box, and the wing, and the sander, and all the stuff to go with that.
Okay.
So it ain't cheap, and it keeps going up. This price is locked in till February. I think I priced it last year, and I think it went up. I think I priced the truck last year. Total was like $269,000. So now it's up.
$30,000.
Yes, and it's going to keep going up.
It's amazing inflation, right?
Yes.
What is this replacing?
Well, we'd probably replace our 1996.
So 96.
So that's over, what is it? How many years old is that? 20? Yes.
That's the big one?
That would be one of the originals, the automatic Sterling. No, that was the L8000, the Ford. That's was one of our first automatic trucks that we got. So, yep, it's served its purpose, and it's time. If we don't do something soon, it's just gonna. And we got other trucks that are old too. The 2003 is the next oldest, and then we have a 2007. And the 2003 needs. If we get this truck, we won't have to repair it, but the 2003 needs a new apron in it for spreading sand, and that's, I got a price on that last year. That was $16,000 just to do that. So the repairs add up.
This is a 2026. How long does it take for it to get
Well, we probably wouldn't see it till 26.
26?
Yep.
When do payments start on that?
What was that?
When do payments start on that?
Well, so as I indicated in there, on the be it further resolved, part of this is just to get it ordered. Likely at that time, we'd have to either talk about different funding mechanisms that we can use to pay for it. In 2025, we're going to have the last payment on the street sweeper. So I think that'd be a good time to pick up another finance option for payments of this in 2026. Again, this is just a resolution to order it because it's going to take quite a long time to get here. And as it gets closer to delivery date, depending on where the city's financials are, we can then talk about at a later date on appropriate funding methods for it.
Okay.
Likely a finance option at this moment.
Okay. All right. This would not be a capital improvement fund?
It could be a mix of both. Again,
Okay.
we're a ways away to speculate on how it get financed, but I do know that we're going to have our street sweeper lease payment done by that time, so that might be a good use of those kind of allocated funds.
Okay. Any other questions for
I just
Dan?
got one, Dan, so this is that big truck that comes down and plows the snow and puts it all in the middle and shoots it into the...
That was the payloader that we got last year. These are the trucks that plow the streets and get it off the side. And we do plow to the center of the streets with the plow trucks too. And then we come back with the payloader, with the snow blower, and then we load it into the trucks with that.
Got it.
And we were going with a stainless steel box. That's part of the problem with our other old trucks. They're not stainless, they're just regular steel, and they're rusting out.
Gotcha. You were able to go and look at what?
Yep, we went and looked at, Bob and I,
Okay.
we went and looked at the equipment. yes, we went to Litchfield and looked at the equipment up there, and then we went to Christ Steel also.
All right, any other questions for Dan? You see where we need it?
Need a 96? Yeah. And the stainless steel, like you said, that's gonna help a lot.
Well, yeah, and if we're keeping these trucks for 20, 25 years, 30 years,
Throwing salt and sand in there, and then salt and sand up underneath, yeah.
yeah.
All right, we need a motion to approve resolution number 2024 AH.
I make a motion to approve resolution number 2024 AH.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Approved. All right, going on to letter H. Approval of resolution number 2024 AI, a resolution to eliminate the equivalent dwelling unit billing method. This is the billing method that we've used for billing water to everybody in town. Mr. City Administrator?
Yeah, so this is basically a billing method that was designed in 2003 for a lot of our non-residential users. And I'll just pull up this letter that was drafted on behalf of the city from Bolton and Mink, who did this. And like I said, this is done in 2003. And the idea behind this is a mechanism at that time to fund some of the large increases in debt payments from the sewer upgrades. So essentially what they did is they came up with this equivalency dwelling unit EDU program, which effectively is equivalent to 275 gallons a day at domestic strength. And at that time, they would look at a lot of the non-residential users and effectively take a snapshot of their gallon usage, and then they would charge a certain amount of EDUs for that one business. So for example, if you take the old car wash, at that time when it was done back in 2003, I believe it had 3 EDUs on it because they would take an average of that domestic strength and they would put it into their formula and they would come up with that EDU program. The problem with that, as it sits today, is it's hard to manage, and it's not really equitable and fair to a lot of other accounts based upon varying degrees of usage. I reach out to a lot of other cities. I've also had several conversations with Lana at Bolton and Mink, who helps our Pat Ketterlick in the Sewer and Water Department on our significant industrial user agreements. She's a sharp resource, and not a lot of other cities around the area, even around the state, use a lot of this EDU. It's really kind of something that they utilize in the Met Council area on that EDU component. So back to kind of keeping it simple, my recommendation is to eliminate that program and just go back to the method that we use now, which is just a standard amount per unit. So when we set a usage fee, you just have the amount, and then you have a unit in our billing system that's billed at a per gallon rate. We obviously break it down to X amount of dollars per 1,000 gallons, but it's taking that same mentality, that same method, and just applying it to the sewer fund on those non-residential users. This will just be more fair, more equitable, and easier for utility billing staff to process those utility billing payments. Right now, the way they have to set it up in the system is we have to have basically a one-off rate structure for all of our users, all of our non-residential users that utilize the EDU program, and it's quite challenging to manage. So just going back to a more simple approach, and then in talking with our software company, Danian, about this, it was interesting to note that a lot of their customers, and a lot of their customers that they represent are kind of the city's under that 5,000 of population, and they said a fair amount of people also use that kind of tiered method for billing sewer. So the rates will be established in the next line item when we talk about, we have our first reading for a fee schedule as far as rates go, but this is just more of eliminating that EDU program and just adopting that method of amount per unit.
So with this, and you probably, in short, I'm probably just reiterating what you said, we are going to, we're just going to go strictly by that tiered system that we approved for our water rate system.
Yeah, we charge.
Instead of the EDUs.
Right, correct. Yeah, for our non-residential users, correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
That sounds easy. Is it going to affect much of,
So
is it going to be a big effect for any of the businesses?
A lot of the businesses will probably see a benefit because we're eliminating that kind of that EDU base rate. Everyone has been still paying a usage rate on their usage, but this was affecting base rate, your base rate calculations on a multiplier basis. So I think a lot of businesses are going to see a benefit from this. Over and large, with the, if approved, the addition of the other rate increases from our 5-year utility rate plan, I think it's going to be a minimal amount of offset in our sewer fund that we would see a difference. It's certainly not going to negatively affect it with those other increases in the proposed tier rate structure. And I think we'll be just fine. But again, it's just going to be a way, it's just going to be a simpler method for utility billing to calculate it that way.
And don't you think that if that was ever challenged, the complexities of it would be overly difficult to prove up in court?
Yeah, and then, you know, if staff's not monitoring it closely enough and keeping up with, you know, yearly or annual averages, you know, it could be very, yes, it could be very confusing.
Well, frankly, that was my concern when the EDU method was put in place. And keep in mind that once you do set the rates, I mean, let's say that there's a surprise that happens in 2025, you can certainly adjust your rates on the fee schedule at any point in time. So it seems to me this resolution is a very good thing.
Any other questions for City Administrator Evans about the fee schedule? Or sorry, about the resolution number 2024 AI? All right, so no more questions. We need a motion to approve resolution number 2024 AI.
Make a motion to approve resolution number 2024 AI.
Second.
A motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, same sign. All right. Letter I, first reading of ordinance number 2025-1, an ordinance amending ordinance 2024-1. This is the fee schedule. All right, so there are a few adjustments made there, highlighted in red, I believe. City Administrator Evans, you want to go through the big highlights there?
Yeah, I can kind of just go the overview there. We did add a consumption and display, which is what we allow for. We just never had a fee for it. And then also we've added the cannabis and hemp business licenses and renewals, as it was just outlined in our final ordinance of that. Talking with the building official Corey Block, some recommendation to increase some fixed fee amounts by $5 across the board for those fixed fee building permits. As shown on the screen.
Corey, did you see a lot with that around the meetings that you worked with?
We're still behind most of the other communities.
Yeah. Okay.
Here's our residential and commercial utility fees. As I indicated, the city's in its third year of the rate increase for water and utility fees, and this is matching up to that adopted schedule that was approved. So you can see it's taking a couple of percentage increases on the base fee, and then getting a couple percentage increases on the tiered per gallon usage on the water. And then rightfully so, there's a new addition that I spoke of for a tiered usage in sanitary sewer. And the difference between those rates, between the 589 for the 0 to 6,000 and then the 6,001 above is a 5% increase, so 30 cents-ish on that. Another recommendation that we had during our preliminary kind of budget hearing was the affair of our refuse fund and not charging enough and not getting enough revenues in there to offset expenses. So we talked about at that time an initial across the board $1 increase per bag. And that would likely bring us up even in the refuse fund. It's still at that point wouldn't be turning a profit, but it would get us closer into the margins of even. And then as that kind of stabilizes a little bit, we could see if other increases needed to take place. We also do have our garbage truck payment that'll be coming off in a few years, and that can also be affected in there as well. So that's got those increases in there. I believe that was it for. Oh, and then I talked to Dorothy a little bit on the pool pass, and again, this was talked about in the preliminary budget hearing about kind of an evening rate, and then also an early bird special for some of those season passes. So, by and large, what I just kind of read through there in the outlined red areas would be the recommended changes for the 2025 fee schedule.
With the early bird sign up, did she come up with a date with that now?
Likely we'll do the week of when they come in to do the lessons. So it'll be right around that time frame. I'll work it out once Dorothy gets back, but we kind of tentatively talked about that time frame.
Okay. All right. Any questions for City Administrator Evans or Corey, or while Dorothy's not here?
I have one question. It's not a major question, but what constitutes a pollinator garden, and why is there a $250 fee for a garden?
Great question. That's an anticipated fee. Some of you may recall, and we have yet to do update in the ordinance, but they have allowed pollinator gardens for native species of plants. So people that want to plant those specific plants in their yard can do so, and it's technically not against city ordinance per se because it's a pollinator garden.
But so like these species, if somebody plants 3 of them around their patio, is that considered a pollinator garden?
This would take a native species of grasses and whatnot. I don't know the list off the top of my head, but essentially you're turning potentially your front yard.
Yeah, I know that there's a lady up on North Waterville, and she got a thing from the state or something, got money to do it. She killed off her front yard and has got all kinds of plants and flowers in there.
Sure.
That I understand is a pollinator garden.
Yep, so
I didn't know if we actually had wording of how big, how...
No, we do not have an ordinance that essentially puts those into play as of yet.
This is a very hot button topic. It has been litigated in the courts. It will continue to be litigated in the courts. There was a statute passed a year or so ago on this that gives cities the power to regulate these pollinator gardens. And it is an interesting question as to what a pollinator garden truly is, because the statute is completely silent as to that. But the verbiage in this, and I'm very familiar with the statute, I've read it a number of times, I've been involved in some of the litigation as to what is and what is not a pollinator garden. But essentially, it does not constitute turf grass. For instance,
right.
Bluegrass rye. If someone is allowing that to simply go to seed, that would be captured by our public nuisance ordinance. If someone has some native plantings or some native flowers or some perennials planted around their house, that would probably not constitute a pollinator garden.
I mean, I was just getting like, I understand like, you know, like you said, when she did the whole front yard, but I know a lot of people will have a little small area, you know, like you said, they'll plant some flowers in this year, but they'll have some perennials of native stuff or whatever that do attract pollinators.
Sure.
You know,
And some cities have started to actually pass pollinator garden ordinances. For instance, Elysian, they have a pollinator garden ordinance. And I think I'll go ahead and get that to Dan. And, you know, we might as well start that discussion because it is something that we're going to wrestle with, especially if you are tackling some nuisance properties. We should take a look at that. But cities can set regulations with regard to pollinator gardens. The statute is silent as to the types of regulations that you can pass. For instance, Elysian has setback requirements from property lines from an adjacent property owner. They also have width and depth, basically a density limitation on them. They require maintenance. They have to be burned off from time to time. They have to be trimmed. They have to be watered. They have to be weeded. And Elysian's is fairly in-depth with that regard. What you can't do is you can't just allow your grass to go to seed.
it's a pollinator.
That's correct. That would certainly not be a pollinator garden, and there's case law to that effect and even statutory verbiage. It has to be a native planting, and it has to be managed, and it has to be cared for. I believe we've also addressed that in Cleveland, if I'm not mistaken. And in fact, that case was litigated. Cleveland prevailed.
Okay. Any other questions? Good question.
Very good question.
This is just the first reading. We need to, are there any more questions on that? No questions? Moving on to letter J, we need to set a public hearing for ordinance 2025-1 on January 14th, our next city council meeting, 2025 at 7 p.m.
I'll make a motion to set the public hearing for ordinance 2025-1 for January 14th, 2025 at 7 p.m. at City Hall.
Second.
And a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All opposed, same sign. All right. Letter K, we have the 2025 ambulance agreement from the LeCenter ambulance, obviously. The city portion is $43,695. Where is that compared to last year?
Same as last
It is the same as last year, okay. They do a great job for our community as well. We need a motion to approve the 2025 ambulance agreement.
I make a motion to approve the 2025 ambulance agreement.
Second.
A motion and a second. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. All right. Approved. All right, moving on to letter L. Approval of the Law Enforcement Labor Services 2025 Collective Bargaining Agreement. Page 105 to page 131. 4. There's a couple more after that one. A lot of verbiage changing there. City Administrator Evans, City Attorney Moran, and City Council Member Dan Steffen. Where was that the discussion there? If one of you could give us an overview of this, please.
I'll leave the verbiage to you. That's an attorney.
Yes, we met with the union, with representatives of the police department. Administration was there. I was obviously there. We essentially came to an agreement with regard to the collective bargaining agreement. Most municipalities have collective bargaining agreements, law enforcement agreements like this that are 2, 3, and 4 years in duration. Lee Centers, the last couple, I believe, were 1-year agreements. Certainly the one that is set to expire at the end of this month is a 1-year agreement. I personally think it's good to have a multi-year agreement. It's easier to negotiate from the employer's perspective, and of course I represent the employer, so a multi-year agreement is a way to go for an employer. And that is essentially what we will be, what we have proposed to you. We negotiated a 2-year agreement. Wages are contained in the packet and are a part of it, of course. Dan, you may need to refresh my recollection as the percentage on it, but I think that we were very reasonable, and the employee and the union, frankly, were also very reasonable with regard to police wages. Frankly, in the past, they had been below market. We're now in the range where we should be. And so, you know, this is a fairly good agreement. Majority of the verbiage in the the collective bargaining agreement will not be changing. We did add a floating holiday, I believe, and we essentially cleaned it up to eliminate some unnecessary verbiage. One thing that is important to point out is this CBA does not cover part-time employees. It only covers full-time law enforcement employees. So essentially, we've got a 2-year agreement. We've capped wages. We've set them according to steps, which is very common, and yeah, by and large, it's a good CBA.
I'll pull up the end of their agreement here. They have got their, here we go. So this is their proposed steps, and you'll notice that it says 2024. I'm still waiting on a final version from our conversations that we had last night to today. We're unable to get the final, but there's just some very small things that are in this version that will be coming on the final version. The dates being one of them. Obviously, we're talking about 2025 as we look at this.
So that should be amended to 2025?
That is correct. Yeah. And the final version will have that. Unfortunately, their business agent with LELS was not able to follow through and get me a final version as I requested, so I could give the council and then prepare in the package for this evening. So that's just one of those things in the business that we kind of got to deal with. So you're kind of looking at one that did not get caught in their preliminary, their CBAs. A couple of these small things did not get caught right away. So effectively, this is for their 2025 schedule. And this would be essentially 25 and 26 step schedule as well, because we are now negotiated for a 2-year collective bargaining agreement. Go ahead. No, so I just did want to note that this follows very closely. If we would be, if our police staff would be non-union in nature, this would follow almost to a T on where they would be at in our current pay scale system. So if like I said, if they're non-union and they were to go into a points value of 240 points, they would fall right in line with this step system, even at a 2% increase that was just approved. The only difference is they have one less step in these last 2 steps, step 6 and step 7, instead of our non-union, which is scale, which is 2.75 increase from these last 2. They're floating out at 3.5. So it's essentially 3.5% in these last 5 steps, and then 4% on these 2. So it falls in line, which is definitely what we want to try to do. Is even though that they're a union and they have their own pay scale, we still want to, as an overall unit of government, make sure that those unions are falling in line with kind of that, again, that pay equity component too. So that's kind of where the negotiations end.
And right now, we don't have anybody up in those top scales due to our turnover. And then some of the verbiage that they were talking about could be attributed to this is the first time with this union. They used to be Teamsters, now they went with LELS.
Correct.
Correct.
So it's also part of the issue is they were really late to get going on their transfer and really late to get set up. So again, we just didn't get to negotiations soon enough. We did a lot of the preliminary legwork, kind of via email, and then to try to do as much as we can before the first time that we met, which was yesterday for an official sit down with all parties involved. So it was just kind of a timing issue for this one to get it before council tonight and approved for 2025.
What are the percentage increases for 25 and 26?
So they're locked in on a 2-year agreement with this scale. There's no percentage increase from there. They'll get a step increase, but no percentage increase. That has been factored into what they have proposed to us. So right now, on the current step system, the step one was $31.50, and this is $33.50, which represents, on a per step basis, about a 6.4% increase.
So no COLA next year, no percentage next year?
That's correct.
Correct.
Just
Just-
the same
For
scale.
2026.
The increases will come in the form of steps,
Makes sense.
no
Thank you.
COLA.
Okay. Any other questions?
Well, thank you guys for working on this.
All right, we need a motion to approve the Law Enforcement Labor Services 2025 Collective Bargaining Agreement.
I make a motion to approve the 2025 collective bargaining agreement.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. All right, moving on to reports of departments and organizations. A, here we have planning and zoning. Corey, go out.
Let me dazzle you with my sport coat lights while I'm up here.
I'll get a flash, boy.
Are they on?
No, battery's dead.
They're just weak. Good evening, Mayor and Council. I don't have much to report other than answering any questions about the cannabis ordinance that you guys already passed. Thank you for paving the road ahead of us so we can react and find the location for this to be bought, sold, and used. We didn't know what kind of opposition there would be or what kind of support there would be. So that was why we did it this way, and you guys paved the road ahead of us, and now we can react to it. And
Are there any interested parties in opening this type of?
nobody's reached out directly, but we did find 1 or 2 that already hold a license.
One in the city that held the current license for the cannabinoid products, where the current process to register is just fill out a couple of things of information with the state.
That's the low dose.
Yep.
Correct.
The regular stuff, those licenses are held up in court right now too,
Yeah,
aren't they?
Yeah.
they probably won't be issued until spring of 2025, maybe even summer of 2025.
Yeah.
Did they actually get a low potency license? Or
Well, they did, at
they,
this point, OCM is not, so
Or are they just-
2025, it's going to transition to Office of Cannabis Management, but right now, the license is just basically a registration license to get the low dose. And that's all the current standards are.
have they actually been issued a license, or are they in for the lottery? Or maybe you don't know.
This is not for that, this is for low dose, this is for the drinks and the gummies.
Okay.
Which is just a registration process to get registered. Very similar to when we're gonna do it at the liquor store to start selling THC and the infused and the off sale. It's basically just a registration component through the state.
Have they actually received that registration?
Yeah, those registrations are all over the state right now.
It's posted on the
You can go
website.
website and you can do a pin
And there
drop and
are
see.
2 of them? One?
Did we find 1 or 2?
For low potency?
Yeah.
No cap.
No,
No,
already
There's
on
one
the,
registered, I
Just
believe.
one.
Okay, okay,
Yeah, according to the state site.
all right.
so nobody specifically reached out, but one's out there that's obviously interested because they're on the OCM website
Sure,
for sure, and I would assume others are as this evolves.
yeah, okay.
That's all I have.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Liquor store report, Ms. Fickler.
Good evening, council, mayor. Our November 2024 sales were $99,578.62. October gambling was $8,888.98. November CNN sales were $609.01. You can see our revenue sources before from November 2024 to November 2023, and we saw an increase of a little over $3,000 from last year. November, we had some music by Gary West. We're doing very well for our Vikings football games. We had a turkey bingo, which was awesome, and that brought in a lot of people, and we also were able to bring in $300 for the food shelf. So that was really great to see. We had some more music by Melissa Schultz, and then the main problem per se was our problems with CTS again. Key fobs, continuous beeping in my office, internet, card reader, card processing, on and on and on and on for about 3 weeks. As of late last week, it seems like everything is corrected and fixed, but we'll see. So same problems, a little bit more than we had a year ago. So yeah, not happy with them whatsoever. Made it very difficult. But going forward, December, our events, we have a Pfeffer tournament coming up this Saturday at 1 p.m. Next Friday, the 20th, we have live music by Lucas Richards, a meat raffle, and an ugly Christmas sweater contest. The 29th, the Sunday, we have Somer Karaoke. We have a New Year's Eve party, and you can see our holiday hours are posted there, and we'll have those also on our Facebook page. We also are doing a Be a Santa to a Senior. We've been doing this for the last couple years, where we accept donations and gifts from the community, and then we put little presents together and bring them up to the nursing home and the carriage house and the Horizon Place. So that's really fun to do and give back. We already talked about the credit card processing fee and whatnot, and then the THC products, just an update on that. I registered with the state of Minnesota last week. Our insurance covers it, and then we just have to do an additional 10% tax on those products. Any questions?
The gift, what was that gift thing called again?
Be a senior to a Santa. Be a Santa to a senior.
What kind of gifts are you?
So like just simple things: lotion, chapstick, chocolate, coffee, hot chocolate, puzzle books, reading books. I listed a whole bunch on our Facebook page, which is LC Muni, and then also little cards and off sale and the bar you can pick up to grab to go purchase.
Awesome.
How long are you,
Yep, so December 20th, we asked for all donations to be in, and then on Monday the 23rd, we deliver.
okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Ms. Fickla? All right.
That's good, thank you.
Thank you. Police report, Chief Overton.
Good evening. November 2024, 185 calls for service, 1,927 miles patrolled. I know the public nuisance came up earlier tonight. We opened up 8 more today alone. We covered 22 in the month of November, 17 in October, and I think we had 10 in September. So we are definitely hitting those hard. And once the snow flies, they'll obviously go to a halt for the most part, but spring they'll kick back up. And there's several yet to be identified and tackled, but we can only do so many at one time. So,
Are these officer initiated or
all of them.
complaint driven?
All are officer, with the exception of very few.
That's awesome. Thank you.
Was that a question? Oh, I thought, did you have a question?
No.
No, okay.
I was just commenting on that house on Maple Street that just got put in.
The one that hasn't been set yet?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's planning and zoning, that's not for me. Corey, you're up. So, any questions? All right, thank you all.
Administrators report, City Administrator Evans.
Well, we got Public Works ahead of me.
I don't have to have one if you don't want.
Sorry, Public Works.
I don't have much anyway. Good evening, council. Basically, we got the skating rink pretty close to opening. We flooded it 3 times. It's looking pretty good. We'll get the lights turned on here hopefully the next day or so people could start using the skating rink.
Good.
Other than that, I don't have anything else unless you guys have questions.
I don't have any questions. Anybody else have any questions?
Did you get the signage ordered for the old new location?
Yep, we just got the sign. So we have to get the sign put up for our new location where the branches, the tree debris, leaves and all that is going to go.
Working out nice there so far?
So far, yep.
Anybody still dropping off at the?
Yeah, we're going to have to close it off. But
Yeah, so
And
when
we're-
the signage up there, it'll be good, and then we can do social media to try to get everybody and then get the old sign out there, so. Should be good, I'm glad that happened, before the snow came, so.
Yes.
Get that done.
Yep, and it's pretty much cleaned out there. There might be a little bit, but we keep at it. So,
I drove out there today. Looked good to me.
yep. Okay. Any other questions?
Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, now administrator's report. Administrator Evans.
As you can see, they're working on the remodel, and that's not a figure of speech. They're literally out there now sanding the drywall. They've got that, they've been going good on that. They've done the drywall and then the mudding and taping, and then now sanding for the last couple of days here. And so they're actually, believe it or not, starting to pick up the pace on this, and I just had a meeting this afternoon with the project manager, and we kind of did a punch list for things that are coming in. And realistically, within the next 2 to 2.5 weeks, the majority of the remodel should be done. They're going to have the wainscoting on there to cover the electrical, the cabinets with the top for the kind of reception service desk area will be in. Painted lights are up, new grid in the ceiling will be done. And basically at that point, they need to get it somewhat finished, and then St. Peter Glass can come in and then they can laser measure what they need for the front door and then the glass component of that. So one of the big things that I talked to them about is, we've had several discussions on this before, is majority of this remodel is getting funded through the ARPA dollars, and we need to get those spent before the end of the year. And at this point, I'm pretty satisfied with our meeting this afternoon that a majority of those funds will be invoiced out prior to the end of the year, so we can get rid of those ARPA dollars, and then we can move on from there. So it'll likely, it will spill over into January before staff's fully in there. I might be able to sneak in there sooner because the office is on the back side, and then the deputy clerk and office assistant might have to come in at a later time once they for sure get the glass up. But it's kind of a fluid situation, but we are moving along and we're making progress now. Another thing I wanted to touch on was I was kind of involved in our last LeSueur County officials meeting, and that was hosted up at the government center. And they talked about they hired a firm, Bolton and Meg, to do their LeSueur County Vision 2050, what essentially updates their comp plan and some of their land use plans. And with that, they're going to have some involvement with city officials. So it's kind of just setting the framework on what they're looking to do and updating a lot of their comp plans. And then we'll look for some city engagement with that as well. Obviously, their goal behind that is to not necessarily conflict with current city comp plans that are out there, but to make sure that we're kind of meshing well nicely with other jurisdictions within the whole county. So excited to be a part of that and work with them as they work through that process, and I'm very glad for the county that we can be involved in it. Other than that, that's all I've got for my reports.
Thank you. Any questions for City Administrator Evans? All right, moving on to other business. Council reports. Does anybody have anything that they want to present from any group that they've been a part of? Or?
I have been going to the, can't even think of it.
Ambulance Commission?
Well, that went to the Ambulance Commission, and they are in the process of reworking leadership, and it's coming along nicely, and they're also finalizing the order of a new ambulance, which I think might be wrong, but they're expecting in 2026, the new ambulance. I could verify and double check that. I think I passed it on to Dan, but I don't remember the exact date. But then the one thing that I've been a part of is the Tri-City Community Ed. They have a project where they are bringing, I guess it's called Facts Now, which is, when I went to school, was called Home Ec. And that went to the wayside when the conversion of LeCenter and Montgomery. And LeCenter still had the available area for a fax room or home ec room. And so what the district has done, they've gone ahead and updated, to be in compliant for safety reasons. And the goal is to go ahead and make that a class once again for students in middle school, so that, because I think they offer it at the high school. So when they go to the high school, they have some background knowledge of what they're doing, burn the place down. And what the community ed director has been doing, which I think is great, has been going around to different businesses within LeCenter so that they can become some stakeholders in it and look for funds, because basically they're looking to purchase the equipment, and there's no spoons, there's no ladles, there's nothing. So they're going from scratch. And from the last meeting, businesses have been willing to contribute to that, and the fundraising is going really well. And one of the things they want to do is establish that as a community ed class, a cooking class, and start that way, and then move on from there. But I think it's a great project, and I'm excited about it.
That's good. I think it'd be real good for kids to learn how to
boil water,
fend for themselves a little bit too, right? That's good. Anybody else have anything that they'd like to report on? No? All right. There's a request that City Hall be closed on December 24th for Christmas Eve and December 31st for New Year's Eve. We have done this in the past. Do we need a motion for this?
Yeah, that'd be great. And again, staff is going to use their vacation time, but because the holiday falls on Wednesday, a lot of issues keeping the office staff. So just a request to close on the eves of both of those.
And what if we decline it?
Well, then we'll be looking.
Somebody will.
We need a motion for that?
I make a motion to approve the request to close on December 24th and January 31st.
Second.
That's December 31st.
Yeah, December 31st.
Yep. We have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign.
Thanks for that.
All right, so City Hall will be closed on December 25th for Christmas Day and January 1st for New Year's Day. All right. That is the end of the meeting. We need a motion to adjourn.
I make a motion to adjourn.
I will second.
Motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign.